Rabbi Erez Sherman. I'm one of the rabbis here at Sinai Temple, and we are honored to be with our guest, who is a new friend of Sinai Temple, and we'll hear what that's all about, Ariana Berlin. So I'm going to actually first begin by sharing how our paths have crossed, and then why we are all gathered here today. So as you know, we are in an unprecedented time, both in the world, but really also in the Jewish world. And that means, what will our high holidays look like? And by that, you know that many synagogues around the country, including Sinai Temple, we will be virtual. But when we say virtual, it won't look like this in a Zoom room. It'll be a really high-level virtual service. Some people have asked, how do you find the production company that's going to produce the high holidays? And the answer is actually you don't, because no production company has ever produced a high holidays before. So we found an amazing company, Gracie Visions, and one of those producers is Ariana Berlin, who is here with us today. And we'll get to the high holidays a little later, but we met a couple of months ago when Ariana sort of scouted out our physical building here at 10400 Wilshire Boulevard. And then somebody sort of whispered to me, hey, you know, there's a movie about her. So without further ado, instead of me introducing that, we're going to look at a quick trailer of who Ariana Berlin is before we met with the high holidays. So please enjoy this trailer.
That's me, Ariana Berlin. Gymnastics is my life. Never know what life is gonna throw at you, right? Yeah. What if I don't qualify for the Olympics? Mom, watch out!
You're in the hospital. Been in a coma, honey.
Gymnastics is pretty much off the table.
I need to go to the Olympics.
Ariana, hey, I'll take you in.
You know, you could still compete. If you want something, you have to fight hard for it.
And what if something I really want is no longer attainable?
Better get ready, you're going out.
With who?
Welcome to Paris.
Your old teammates have been asking about you. You can't stay away forever, you know?
And where am I going to do gymnastics?
UCLA.
Ariana Berlin, right? If you're gonna come back to gymnastics, you need to come back like you really mean it.
We bring in the light, the music.
Starting to realize my limitations, I guess.
I don't think you know the meaning of limitations. They literally could not stop you unless they hit you with a car.
This isn't about gymnastics. It's about life.
So let's start there, Ariana. As many people here know on this phone call, I'm a rabbi, but also an enthusiastic sports fan. Just maybe you can share with your beginning into the world of gymnastics. I know it's basically as a 3-year-old. Take us from that point to the realization of your potential to not just, sorry, 1 second. Sorry. So when she moves with her mom down under. 1 second. Sorry about that. From the realization that you had not just potential to, you know, be a regular gymnast, but in fact an Olympic gymnast. How did that go?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Erez, for having me. It's an honor to be here with you all, and great to see some of your faces that I've recognized over all these production elements that we've been doing over the high holidays. So it's been it's really great to be on here. Yeah, so you know, in gymnastics, you start when you're very young. 3 years old, mommy and me classes, and I always had a ton of energy as a kid, running around, flipping around, and my parents really wanted to tire me out. So gymnastics kind of was the sport for me. And I quickly just fell passionately in love with it. And, you know, by the time I was in elementary school, I think it was 4th grade, my mom was taking me out of elementary school at lunchtime, driving me from San Diego to Orange County and back 5-6 days a week for, you know, 6-7 hour practices. Because, you know, from a very young age, I had some role models, and it was, you know, I'm going to the Olympics and then I'm going to UCLA, and that's how my story is going to unfold here. So, at a very young age, I was very determined and focused on my ultimate dream and goal, and pursued that. And, life happens, and there's unknowns, like this car accident that spins your course, out of control a little bit, but it's really how you get that back on track that defines you. And, I think I wouldn't be the same person that I am today if it wasn't for that horrific, part of my life that actually had a positive outcome.
So when you're 16 years old, right, this happens, you're driving with your mother. All of us in Southern California know the route from Orange County to San Diego. Take us to maybe that scene in that film where the doctor says, like, Ariana, it's just not happening. What goes through your mind, and then what gets you to realize I'm going to prove you wrong?
Absolutely. So I was actually a little bit younger. I was 14 years old, and the movie is based on my life, but there's definitely moments that are fabricated. But that's essentially what happened. My mom and I was now at a gym in Temecula. They just had an elite program where I could take my gymnastics to that next level, which is, I homeschooled, and I was training twice a day, 6 days a week up in Temecula. And, my life had been in Orange County for 6 years, and it was Thanksgiving weekend. My mom and I were like, let's just go back to Orange County. We'll have a girls' weekend. We'll go shopping. We'll get our hair done, our nails done, wherever, all the typical places we would typically go. And I don't remember that morning. I don't remember 5 days later. So we were driving on the 73 toll road up to Orange County, and apparently we were hit from behind. Our car rolled 5 or 6 times, and they put me in a medically induced coma. So I was hospitalized, for my mom and I both for about a month, but I was in a medically induced coma for a week. I had, 2 collapsed lungs, broken wrists, both of my legs had broken. I had an emergency operation where they put a titanium rod in my right femur. I broke my wrist. We were both a mess. My mom shattered her scapula, had some minor brain trauma, broke her tibia. So we were bandaged up, many surgeries later. And, it got to a point where I was on the road to recovery. It was like my mom and I went from progressing to a wheelchair, to a walker together, to our crutches together, I always had a very, very close-knit family, but I think just living through that process with my mother and the support of my brother and my dad, we are unbreakable now. We just have this very tight bond. And so it got to the point where, I was starting to get back into things. And I remember going back to my doctor's appointment, and they thought that I would have to have another surgery on my ACL. And I remember the doctor just told me that he thought that my growth plates were going to grow inconsistently. So one leg would be longer than the other, and that my gymnastics career was over. And I'm a very optimistic person. I never think the worst. Failure is not an option for me. It's just what other path can I take? And at that point, this was maybe a year later, I hadn't cried about the accident. My parents always asked me, do you need to let this out? Do we need to talk to a therapist? Is there something we need to do? And I don't know what it was. I just always thought I'd be back in gymnastics and I'd just be back on track where I left off. And the doctor at that point just said, this isn't in the cards for you. And I think that was the first time I actually broke down about the accident, about my career kind of coming to an end. And what I learned at that point was, I'm not going to take someone's advice or, even if it's their professional opinion, I need to find out that for myself. It needs to be my journey. And whether it's going back and realizing I'm in too much pain, I can't do it, whatever it might be, I needed to live that experience. And that's what I did. And I tried to go back. My femur with that titanium rod in it just gave me tremendous pain. I homeschooled 8th grade. I was now going into high school. There were a lot of factors of being a normal kid and having a normal social life, but also, feeling like I can't reach my full potential because I'm not able to train as hard or as much as I wanted to because of my restrictions in pain, I guess. And so I finally decided, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. You know, my time with gymnastics is over, and I'm going to move on to something else. And thankfully, you know, my mom, gymnasts can, you know, they spend at a very young age a lot of time in the gym. And that's all they know. You know, it's a very, very specific thing that you're doing, and you're spending all your time and energy. And it's very difficult to have a well-rounded, full life. And I remember early on, I started picking up this passion for dance. And I was always the person in my friend group that had rhythm. And my mom made it a point, and my coaches were not happy about it. But once a week, my mom took me out of practice in Temecula, drove me straight down to San Diego, straight to a hip hop dance class, so I could get that hour once a week of another passion. So I could, you know, not just be this one-dimensional person. And that passion grew. And when I realized, you know, I'm not going to be able to do gymnastics right now, I put everything I had into dance. And that ultimately brought me back to gymnastics, into UCLA, which is another crazy part of the story, which we can get to in a bit. But yeah.
So let's go to something that's not in the movie, but is in some of the things that I read and you have told me. SeaWorld. Everybody loves SeaWorld. And what was your role at SeaWorld, and how did that lead you to the next step?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had started doing this hip hop dance troupe called Culture Shock San Diego. And they were actually an 18 and over group, but I auditioned at 15 and they let me in. I was one of the youngest members ever to be a part of their troupe. And as a part of that, we were hired by SeaWorld to perform in these like summer night spectaculars, I guess, where it encompassed, you know, us, which were the dance troupe, gymnasts, rhythmic gymnasts, percussionists, contortionists. It was this whole kind of variety show. And lo and behold, the director and choreographer of this production was Valerie Condos Field, who was the current and my idol head coach of the UCLA gymnastics team. So I'm 15 years old in baggy clothes and a, you know, backwards hat, coming in as a hip hop dancer and break dancer. And I just remember we connected instantly. She had recognized me. She recognized my name. She was like, wow, you were that up and coming gymnast who was in that horrific accident. Because, you know, at that point I was in the accident, 14 years old. I was a little young to be recruited, but I was starting to get to that age where, you know, college coaches were starting to recognize who you were. And we connected. We had an instant bond. To this day, she's my second mom. I call her for everything, and we're very close. But so I had performed at SeaWorld for that summer night, those summer nights. The next year, we got hired again. And I was 16 going into my junior year. And I remember just seeing the gymnasts in the show jumping on the trampoline, and I really started missing it. And obviously I had tried to go back. That didn't work out for me, but I don't know. I had a second wind or something, because I went home to my dad and I just said, you know, what if I went back? You know, what if I could be a part of this program in some capacity? And he was like, you'll never know unless you ask. So I remember it was the last night of rehearsals before Miss Val was going back up to LA, and I literally just walked up to her and said, Miss Val, it's been my dream to be coached by you, to be a part of the UCLA gymnastics program. I don't know what I'm capable of doing, but I will get back in the gym tomorrow if you'll give me an opportunity to be a part of your program. And I kid you not, and who does this? Right then and there, she said, I've seen your work ethic with your director, and I would take you on just for that. That next day, I went into the gym. I ended up graduating high school a year early. I walked on to the UCLA gymnastics team, ended up competing in the all-around my freshman year. She offered me a full ride scholarship for my remaining 4 years at UCLA. And I finished 4th in the nation my senior year. And my 5th year, when I was a volunteer assistant coach, undergrad assistant coach, we won a national championship. So
I'll pause right there for a moment, because I have a little coverage I've learned from the best in the production, and we can just see this. I think it was the Pac-10 championship, so you can see Ariana in action.
UCLA and Ariana Berlin, who is an accomplished breakdancer, and a lot of that bleeds into her routine.
Beautiful double pipe. There's that attitude I was talking about. And the crowd just goes wild. I think what's so unique about their routines, they pick the perfect music to.
So for those of you tuning into the Sinai Temple High Holidays, actually, Ariana has the clergy doing those cartwheels down the aisle. It's going to be great. But in all honesty, I mean, when you hear this story, right, from basically recovery to, if you wish, wholeness again, and it's, I guess in our tradition, we call it chutzpah, the nerve or gall to actually ask this person, like, not ask them, but tell them, I will do this. I think it's a beautiful message within our tradition that, I mean, what your dad taught you, you never know until you ask. I think it's we're a tradition about questions. We're actually not a tradition about answers. I want to go back to your upbringing, actually, because when I asked Ariana, when I met her, like, who are you? Not the gymnast, but like, you're producing a High Holidays at Sinai Temple. Like, do you know the High Holidays? And maybe share a little about your Jewish educational journey up through 5th grade. And then we'll go backwards to your family history, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm a producer at Fox Sports. I do long-form sports documentaries. So I'm in the storytelling business, and being, you know, that I have an athletic background, it's great because I feel like I can connect with these top athletes, and it's such a passion and pleasure to be able to work with them. Going back, my grandparents actually were from Poland, and they were in the Holocaust on my dad's side, so the Berlin side. And, you know, that resiliency of them carried over to my family and myself. And growing up.
They met in the concentration camp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
sorry, I want to not forget that point.
Yeah, sorry. They met, good memory. They met in the concentration camp, fell in love, and, you know, obviously fought for survival and fought for their love, and they were married for over 50 years. And, you know, my parents, they just had their anniversary. I think it was their 38th anniversary. So we carry it on. And, you know, being brought up by Holocaust, you know, survivor grandparents, and then a Jewish family, I went to a Jewish day school, the San Diego Jewish Academy, from preschool all the way to 5th grade. Both my brother and I, we were bar and bat mitzvahed. And from then on, you know, I tried, you know, we always did the High Holidays for sure with the family and Passover at my grandparents, and we kept that up. And when I went to college, you know, you have to find your Jewish community and find, you know, not just the reasons to participate in the community because your family does, but your own, because now you have to take on that responsibility. And it was interesting because it was a journey for me. It did take me a while to feel that fire, to be a part of it. And I actually met my husband, who was a football player for UCLA, and he's Jewish. And our senior year in college, we actually went on Birthright together, which was just an incredible experience. And I felt so connected to Judaism and reconnected. And when I came back, I actually took a 5th year in school. I took Hebrew as my language course, which really reconnected me. And yeah, I think it's just important, you know, my husband and I have both talked about it. It's important to continue our Jewish values and morals. And, you know, I'm pregnant now. If I stood up, you'd see a big bump. But, you know, we plan to pass those traditions down to our future family. So we're excited for that.
So then let's go a little forward. And by the way, in a little while, we're going to do a Q&A. So I'm going to ask, if you do have a question, to either put it in the chat on Zoom or to private message me, and then I'll have the ability to unmute you and answer that as well. So if you have the questions, you can do that as we go. Let's go now to, you know, 4 months ago, you get a call from Gracie Visions, and they say, we're not going to talk about LeBron James and the NBA bubble, but you're going to actually talk about producing the High Holidays. What goes through your mind with that? And how do you then transition from the sports world to Sinai Temple? And we'll talk a little about what we're going to see over the next couple of weeks here.
Oh, I was so excited. You know, I still, even though I've participated in some sort of, you know, Judaism up in LA, I haven't really found my community yet. And so, you know, for High Holidays, my husband and I would walk over to Royce Hall and jump in to a High Holiday service here or there. But, there wasn't really a community that we were a part of. And my husband actually lives down the street from Sinai. So we're big walkers in our family. So we walk by Sinai, every other day. So it felt like home. It just felt like the right opportunity. And I was excited to reconnect and to be able to say, I'm helping editing these videos, and I can read Hebrew, and it's helping me produce. Who would have known that my Jewish education, however many years ago, would actually come in handy in my, professional career. So it's been so great connecting with you, Erez, and the whole Sinai community. Everyone has been so welcoming, and I've actually learned a ton just being around you guys. And it's great to be able to take my sports and production world and my Judaism upbringing and bring them together to create something so different that's been challenging in all these different ways, but even more meaningful to produce, actually.
Actually, I'm going to go back to gymnastics for a second, because you went like this in terms of bringing gymnastics or sports and Judaism together. That's for all of you who know sort of my MO. That's what I try to do here through our basketball camp, through different sports programs. When you were on the gymnastics in that realm, was Judaism ever a part of that, or is it like a completely different thing? Is that ever part of your identity when you're talking to maybe teammates who are not Jewish? And then, so let's talk about that first and then bring it the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, gymnasts coming to college come from many, many different backgrounds and cultures and religions. And so the religious aspect of, all of our backgrounds was never really present in the gym. But I think what at least for me, my Jewish upbringing created these qualities in me that allowed me to get there and allowed me to persevere through all these injuries and, being a walk-on on the team. But I knew I'm going to compete on every event. I knew I just got an opportunity, and I'm not wasting that opportunity. I'm giving everything that I got. And I think that comes from the resilience of my grandparents and the Jewish, culture and nation. And, I feel that in my blood, and I feel like I'm able to be that person and persevere because of that. So maybe it wasn't present with conversations within the team. There weren't that many. I think there was maybe one or two other gymnasts that were Jewish. And actually, one of them went to Birthright with me, which was pretty cool. But yeah, I think more of the morals and values and resiliency is what carried through in my athletic career.
And then take it the other way. So now you're in high holidays. What has been like the biggest challenge, basically? Right. Actually, there's going to be an article in the Jewish Journal tomorrow about what we're doing here at Sinai with Gracie Visions and Ariana. And I basically said, in years past, a rabbi's job, actually my daughter said that a rabbi announces pages. And she's right, but she's also wrong. When she says that, I say, no, actually a rabbi is a producer of a sacred script. So we put the words into people's hearts and inspire them. But this year, with your help, we put the words through a screen into people's hearts. How do you go through that process? Maybe take us through a sneak peek of one prayer that you've been really impacted about this year. Let's talk Lador Vador, right? Because I know some of the people on the call that will be part of that feature. Take us through Lador Vador. First, what you knew about that prayer before, what you know about it now, and then what you see as that moving forward.
So I don't know if I had heard of Lador Vador growing up, or if it was part of my synagogue in San Diego growing up, but just hearing about this feature and hearing that, wow, it's meaningful enough to make a feature about. People want to talk about this. Why? I don't know yet. And as I started diving into it and realizing that it actually started at Sinai Temple with Cantor Mayor Finkelstein and is now like the anthem to Sinai and the Jewish nation, apparently, it's like, and it all started here. That's so meaningful. And to be able to, talk to all these really, great people who have been so invested in Sinai for so many years. I mean, there's got to be something good at Sinai if people have been coming back for over 50 years. I mean, that's incredible. And just the meaning of, putting your arms around strangers and friends and family and really holding people close no matter what your relationship was with them, and inviting them and including them into this prayer and this community was just so meaningful. And it was so nice to hear, how positive and highly everyone spoke about Sinai and this incredible song that was created there.
And then how do you think, like, in terms of, obviously the biggest challenge is, people sitting on a couch on their screen. How do you think in terms of engaging people for the experience, right? A lot of the refrain is right now, we can't sit in those seats that you now have obviously seen empty these last few months since you've been in the building. We can't sit in those seats. The high holidays aren't worth it to me. I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to come back next year. How do you, what do we tell our community? Obviously, we've shown it through the features that you've done to say, no, actually, this is a year that you can connect even more than before.
Well, I think now it's more important than ever, because now's a time where you're forced to separate and you can feel very alone and sad, and like you are missing your community. I haven't hugged my own parents in months. It's tough, but even being able to come on here, I see 50 different faces, and I feel so connected to a Jewish community that I was never connected to, and now I'm a part of it. And I think that's so important it's so easy for someone to shut down and be, sad, because it is sad, it is tough, it is a hard time that we're going through right now. And to keep that all in, but to be able to reach out, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Let's come together and let's celebrate something together that we can all feel passionate and excited about. I think it's so important just to have that connection. And I think, especially, we're so lucky to have technology now. I mean, however many years ago, we wouldn't be able to do this. If, God forbid, there was a pandemic then, we would be isolated. This is something that we get to do. We get to be a part of this. We get the opportunity. So I think it's something that everyone should really take advantage of and make sure that you keep those relationships and that community strong, because we are going to get out of this and we are going to come back together. And why not grow our relationships and our friendships and our community rather than take a hiatus and have to pick back up where we started from?
I also think it's interesting that, this will be forever in terms of the forever part means archived, right? That this is not something that you'll leave and come back from. So we do have a couple of questions already. So we'll get those started and then we'll see where this takes us. So you as a millennial, a young professional, somebody asked, how can we encourage millennials like you to become more involved in religion when they feel disconnected from it? So you can just speak from your personal experience of maybe what just happened over the last 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's having an open mind and an open heart. And, when it is a struggle, and it does come kind of organically, at least for me. And even something as simple as, I know this is a hot topic in the Jewish community, but it's, marrying someone Jewish. My parents never pushed that on me, never asked me to marry someone Jewish. It was so important to me because of how I connected with someone who, fundamentally had the same morals and values and outlook on life. And I think, if you are just bringing your kids into communities that have like-minded people, then they're gonna want to be around like-minded people. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to come to high holidays. I mean, we're all adults. Well, we're becoming adults, and we get to the point where we have to make those decisions for ourselves, and we want to make them wholeheartedly. So I think, it's bringing you up with the right values and morals and surrounding you with like-minded people that will eventually, you'll find your path and you'll find your way to make it special and unique for yourself.
So just a quick question for actually a young person in Philadelphia. How old were you when you started gymnastics?
I was 3 years old, very young. And it's funny because gymnasts start, that's normal, that's average. If you start when you're 5, it is called like you're a little bit later to the program. So it's interesting how young we have to be molded to kind of get to that point.
Wow. We have Mindy Levin from Chicago, and after watching Full Out, she fell in love with your story and resilience. And she would love to hear if you have about perhaps a story about your grandparents' survival story in the Holocaust, if you're willing to share something.
I remember every year, my family, we would always go to Palm Springs. That was our trip with my grandparents and my brother and my parents. And we'd always sit on this chair and we'd just have these great conversations. And I remember one year, my grandpa just really took us through, different stories of the Holocaust. And it was really the first time he got really detailed with that. And maybe we were at the age where we could comprehend it and understand it. But I remember he told us that someone had stolen soup. And guards came in and they were going by one at a time, asking if that person stole it. And they were beating them if they said no, and they would go on to the next. And it was just a horrific story. And my grandpa, I think this is true, but who really knows? He said he jumped underneath the bench and hid and skipped the brutal beating, came back, and survived that moment of a horrific time. And I just remember that was one of the stories he told me. But it's tough hearing these stories about someone that you love, and you can't even comprehend what they've been through, so you just try to listen more than anything and just hear their story, and you hope to share that story so that nothing ever is forgotten.
Actually, I mean, you in that story live out exactly what you are producing in terms of the Lador Vador, from generation to generation. In our generation of millennials, we have that obligation and responsibility to not only share and tell those stories. Obviously, you said you were on Birthright in Israel, and not just to keep them alive for their sake, but actually for our sake as well. We have a question from Howard Lazarus in Minnesota. Have you talked with Allie Raisman?
I have not, although I heard she's really a great girl. She's obviously insanely talented and a beautiful speaker, actually. But no, I have not personally met her. Sorry to disappoint.
Okay, I'm gonna shock you right now. You ready? This is from from Sharon Gitman, who's a member of our community. She said, "I think I'm related to Ariana. Where is your grandfather from?" And I'm gonna give you the next part. You know where he's from?
Where in Poland? Let me follow up with my dad to find out the city, the town, and I'll let Erez know, and he can try and connect us.
Because the next line is that she's holding your bat mitzvah invitation in her hand. Sharon, are you there? Can you unmute yourself for a second?
What?
This is crazy. Hold on, there's Sharon Gitman. So Sharon, do you want to maybe share the story? I don't know it either.
Oh my God!
Sharon, you want to unmute for a second? There we go. So what's the relationship here? This is pretty cool. See, Sinai Temple at its best.
Okay, I'm gonna mute it. I'm actually getting really a little bit sentimental. I've been cleaning out the house, and I somehow came across your bat mitzvah invitation. This is something that I neglected to do for many years. I believe your grandfather was related to my mother's father. My mother is from Sosnowiec in Poland. And shortly before I don't know when your grandfather passed away, but somehow he connected to my mother and wanted to get together. And in the times of, I think my daughter's about your age, it's just really impossible with 3 young kids to try and get her down to San Diego. And there's, something always comes up. I came across in cleaning out, going through all sorts of boxes, I came across this, and I was like, I better follow up on this. So we'll have to.
Yeah, we need to connect. I have chills.
Yes.
Do you know my parents, Howard or Susan Berlin?
No, and I don't know if they have the same address, but I have this invitation. I have the whole thing. We never did anything. My mother is still alive. And so we will have to connect. And I think I heard you. Are you still nearby Sinai? Because we live very close to Sinai.
Yeah, I'll connect you guys offline.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
So, I mean, what just happened here, so Ariana, I did not plan this, I promise, or Sharon.
I did not know.
But this is truly what the value of community is about, coming together. And, you know, some people say there's coincidences. I like to call it in our tradition hashgachat pratit, which means there's some type of divine looking above us that allows these moments to happen. And the fact that they have come together through this is truly amazing. So, okay, new feature presentation, the Berlin reunion. To tell Gracie's visions.
We'll get connected. Okay.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay.
So we're gonna go back to the gymnastic row for a moment. That blew my mind, by the way. Wow, that's sorry, that's amazing. Yes. Okay, a couple of more from Steve Springer. For Ariana, what changed physically for you to enable you to go from basically a walker to competing at UCLA? What was that process?
Yeah, so I basically lived in the physical therapy room. So because of my injuries, I couldn't train. I could maybe train a fifth of the amount that everyone else was training. So when we would go to the balance beam or to the floor exercise, I had one pounding basically event a week that I could do. So it was either I'm tumbling on floor this week, or I'm landing dismounts on beam, or I'm landing dismounts on bars, and that was it. The rest of my training was going up to the bars, closing my eyes, and doing visualizations. And it was repeating the same thing over and over and over, making sure that if I wobbled, I started over. If I fell, I started over. So really just training my mind to will my body once I'm in the competition. And when I wasn't training with everyone else, I was doing physical therapy. I was strengthening, stretching. And thankfully, you know, I would get to the competitions and I would progress. Every competition, I got better. Whereas the final competition in my career was the national championship my senior year, I received the highest all-around score that I had received in my entire career. So it was like the perfect bow tie to my career. And I think it's just, you know, being diligent with physical therapy, and it's not fun. And I'd rather be training other skills and be doing all the fun stuff with my teammates. But it worked. And after 2 years, I think it was going into my junior year, I got my metal rod removed. So I had surgery, had that removed, and I felt like a new person. I had a new leg. I could now train more. I could now try and reach my full potential and get the skills that I had always wanted to try and get, but never could put the hours in to get. So that was life-changing for me. But yeah, just a lot of therapy and a lot of resources at UCLA.
So along with that, Allegra Taus, who's actually going to have her bat mitzvah this year. Actually, you know Allegra because she's saying Hashkivenu for us. How did you manage training and schoolwork? It seems like it's actually a triple here: training, schoolwork, and physical therapy. What did that look like? And I know you mentioned taking an extra year of college. What were the goals in that aspect?
Yeah, you know, we're student athletes, and you know, as much as you feel like, you know, I came to UCLA to compete in gymnastics. You know, UCLA offers this incredible education, and you want to make sure that you're really getting everything you can out of that education portion of it. And it's hard, you know, every week to every other weekend, we're traveling, we're on the road, we're taking tests in our hotel rooms that are proctored by our coaches. And, you know, we have to really be proactive and on top of stuff and time management. So it's difficult, you know. I remember my 5th year when I wasn't a gymnast, you know, I was just a student. I'm like, gosh, I have all this time. Like I can study when I want to study and I don't have to fit it in between practices, but it's absolutely doable. I mean, there's people that go on to be attorney. I mean, my husband's an attorney, and, you know, he was an athlete at UCLA. You know, it's just time management and really figuring out what your priorities are, which, you know, schooling should definitely be up there, and sports is there too.
Nice. Go back again. We're going sort of back and forth, but back to the high holidays for a moment. When the person's turning on the screen for the first time, and by the way, right, some of our services will be for members only. Some will be actually for the global world. We are confirming that we'll also be on JBS for those of you watching around the country right now, the Jewish Broadcast Service. So national TV high holidays. What do you want people to experience besides watching TV?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to get when you're in the synagogue, there's a feeling of community and a sense of like being part of something greater than yourself. And I hope that we provide that same feeling, but two, you get even more out of it. You get, you're going to see these songs that are being sung, but you're going to have so many more creative elements that are involved that evoke emotion or, different feelings within you that maybe sitting down in a synagogue may or may not evoke. And it's just going to be a totally different experience. And I think how meaningful this experience is will be equal, but I think what you're going to be able to retain and get out of it is going to be even more impactful moving forward. We've done a lot of really great features, and to be able to really include the congregation, I think that has set this aside and has made this so different, because you're going to hear from people that are involved in the synagogue. It's really going to feel like a family and a community instead of you sitting and watching the services unfold. You get to feel like you're a part of it, which I think is important.
I mean, that was some of the first advice when I was tasked to go find somebody to produce the High Holidays. They said to me, don't replicate, but lean in, and to watch your team lean into what that is. And you said I think we're in the same business in some way in terms of we are storytellers. And that's exactly, I think, what I know is going to happen as well. You said moving forward, we also talk a lot about, when the lights go out at the end of Yom Kippur, like, what does that look like next? And when you have seen this process leading up to the High Holidays in just a couple of weeks, if you had to produce the next big idea in technology and Judaism based on what you just have done, what do you see being used to continue to create community, even when we are back in the seats?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I don't want to, I feel like being in a synagogue and how the High Holidays are produced is sacred almost, and I feel almost blasphemous if that's, to say, oh, we should add this or that, or this tech thing or this, that. But I think there is definitely a way where, you feel like you're a part of the service. And I know they do that with the aliyahs, and they have families come up, and but maybe in a way where it is there's more technology involved in it. Maybe there are these pre-produced elements that get the community involved, and there's an interview aspect, and really like capture the meaning of these High Holidays from the people that are in the synagogue day in, day out, and have been for years and years and years and years. There's something very important that these people need to share, and I think that it could be a great tool, to be able to share these unique stories with the world in these high holiday settings.
So I have one last question of something that we just talked about offline before, but if anybody has any other questions, feel free to chat them in. We want to, there we go. Nice. Oh, look at this. Okay. Denise Kowitz, where are you writing from? LA? She said, you are definitely a great role model. Have you written a book about your life?
Oh, thank you. I have not written a book about my life. The movie was very exciting, but no, I have not taken on that endeavor. Anybody looking to help a girl out?
I know. I heard there might be somebody out there, but we can talk about it. So yes, that is true. And then maybe you can actually share what you shared with me earlier about the most recent sports documentary that you did, because I think that idea of teshuvah, which is, we translate as repentance, and the whole theme of the High Holidays, but really it's about returning to oneself. So this is not a Jewish story, but I think it has a very Jewish theme of what you just produced. So go for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of my job, we do these long form documentaries, sports documentaries, and our series is called Magnify, and it's basically stories that are bigger than sports. So we're magnifying it on social, economic, all these issues that just transcend the world of sports. And recently, we were actually just nominated for a sports Emmy. The documentary is called Cue Ball, and it's about prisoners at St. Quentin Prison that use basketball as a form of rehabilitation. And it's just so interesting to see, you know, all these walks of life, people that have made horrible mistakes and they're trying to right their wrongs and able to do so through a passion, through a sport. And Kevin Durant of the, well, I guess he's the Nets now, but formerly of the Golden State Warriors, he was the executive producer, and kind of their end of the season game was competing and playing against the Warriors staff members. And it follows it follows 5 different prisoners, but it follows one's journey through his process and rehabilitation process until he gets out and actually gets to try out for the G League. So it's a pretty powerful.
You said the Warriors play the Warriors at the end?
Yeah, so it's the San Quentin Warriors against the Golden State Warriors. That's the finale. That's the final game.
So you obviously see Ariana's background is varied, from sports to gymnastics, and actually just a couple of weeks ago when we were just getting to know each other, I asked her to send her bio, and she sent this whole thing, and she says here, Emmy-nominated sports producer for Fox Sports, and has worked with some of the biggest names in sports, including Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kevin Durant, Simone Biles, and Dwayne Wade. And I said, but what about Sinai Temple and Rabbi David Wolpe? And she said, oh, I totally forgot. And I was totally joking, but it is a beautiful addition to your resume. And I know, more importantly, you and your team have been an amazing addition to Sinai Temple, pushing us both in comfortable ways and honestly in beautifully uncomfortable ways, for making Judaism, renewing Judaism, for millennials, God willing, for all ages. And I've been blessed to work with you and to share our stories, and I hope that those stories continue to intersect as well. So I just want to ask if there are any other questions. I don't see any right now. So I do hope that you tune into Sinai Temple High Holidays. If you are a member, you'll get all your information. If you're not, there are ways to join us as well. You can feel free to reach out. But just remember that what goes into the High Holidays, often people say, you must be working so hard on the High Holidays. And it's not true. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's because we work so hard leading up to the High Holidays that those moments are pure joy to create sacred community. So we hope and we pray that that will be a Shana Tova, a good and healthy year. We say Zochreinu L'chaim Tovim, that we should be inscribed in the book of life for a year of health, and most importantly, a year of shalom, a year of peace. So we want to thank everybody for joining us, and want to thank Ariana, and we will see everybody soon.
Thank you, Erez.
Thank you.
Great.